All right. You asked for it, a deep dive into Ahmed Hulusi's The Great Awakening.
This book is something else.
Yeah, it's really unique. I mean, imagine Sufism, right? But through this lens of like divine reflections.
Yeah.
And get this, Hulusi wrote this when he was in his early 20s.
It's amazing.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Talk about bold ideas. So much to unpack here. Like, what does he even mean by die before you die?
That's a powerful statement for sure.
Right.
It gets right to the heart of, well, a lot of Sufi teachings.
It does.
It's not just about understanding concepts, it's a call to action. This book is like, hey, wake up to your true essence.
Yeah.
That part of you that's beyond like the physical body and the limitations of, the ego.
And even the cover of this book, right? It's so striking with all the symbols of light and darkness. It's like it's hinting at this, profound journey we're about to go on.
That's a great observation.
One of the first things that really hit me was how Hulusi approaches judgment. He has this line. He says, "They who deny and criticize you are those who cannot comprehend the reality, nor can they understand you. But those who comprehend the truth neither criticize nor see any faults in anyone." I mean, wow, how often do we see the world that way?
Not often enough.
Right.
It really challenges us, doesn't it?
It does.
To think differently.
Yeah.
Hulusi's pointing to like a fundamental principle in Sufism. It's called Wadat al-Wujud, and it means the unity of existence.
Unity of existence.
Yeah, the idea that everything is a reflection of the divine.
So when we judge others, we're actually judging parts of ourselves.
Exactly.
Yes.
Aspects of that, divine reality we're all part of.
It really makes you think twice about labeling things good or bad.
Absolutely. And it might even be like our judgments are more about our limited perspective than about any inherent quality in, the thing itself.
That's a good point. So instead of judging, maybe we should try to see the unique value in everything, like each element in this big tapestry of existence.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It's a big shift in perspective, though.
It is, definitely. And this leads us to another key concept, Sir al-Anfusi, the inward journey.
Okay, the inward journey.
This is where dying before you die really comes into play.
Okay, so back to that phrase, this die before you die idea. It's intriguing.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean? Like, for me in my life, am I supposed to give up everything I enjoy?
Not necessarily. I mean, Hulusi's talking about the death of the ego,
Oh, okay.
not the physical body. You know that hadith about those who act like they're going straight to paradise, right up until the last moment.
Yeah.
It's about realizing your true essence isn't bound by, fleeting desires. It's deeper than that.
So it's not about denying our human experience, but
Yeah.
about recognizing there's a deeper level to who we are.
Exactly.
The level connected to something bigger.
He uses this term fitra, which means natural disposition. It's like, imagine each of us is a seed, right? But we're programmed to become a specific plant.
Okay.
We have this potential to manifest certain qualities, but it's that inward journey that reveals our true blueprint.
So we're all seeds with a specific blueprint, and the inward journey helps us figure that out.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a really interesting concept. And it makes sense because Hulusi doesn't just tell us to go inward, right? He actually gives us this framework for understanding the different levels of like engagement we can have with knowledge. I think he uses the analogy of the ocean.
Yes, he does.
Oh, I love a good analogy.
He compares people to those who have, only heard of the ocean.
Okay.
Then there are those who have walked along the shore, and then those who can swim. But the ultimate goal, he says, is to become the ocean.
To become the ocean.
Yeah, to fully embody that vastness of understanding.
Wow, that's a powerful image. And Hulusi actually connects this to specific terms from the Quran, right?
Yes.
He talks about abrar and makorabun.
He does. The abrar, they're the ones who diligently study the Quran.
Okay.
They're always seeking deeper meanings, mastering the subtleties. And then you have the mukorabun. They're the ones who are blessed with divine knowledge. It's like they're swimming in the depths of that ocean of understanding.
I hope they just know.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like a gift almost.
It makes you wonder, what would it be like to reach that level? To become the ocean, so to speak?
It's a beautiful aspiration, isn't it?
It is.
I think what Hulusi's suggesting is that it's not just about intellectual knowledge, but about a transformation of our being. Recognizing our interconnectedness with all of creation.
That's really profound. And speaking of levels of understanding, Hulusi introduces us to those who have kind of already become the ocean, the Sufi saints. He describes them as hidden guides, almost living incognito amongst us.
Right, almost undercover.
Yeah, like right under our noses.
And he uses this really interesting description. He says, They are the giving hands of the rob they do not take. And they ask people to follow the Rasul of Allah, Saw, and take only the Quran as master.
So they're dedicated to service, but in a humble way.
Exactly. It's not about seeking attention or power.
So Hulusi is really challenging our ideas about spiritual authority, right? True saints might be hidden in plain sight, focused on serving others rather than, status or recognition. But isn't that idea of hidden saints a bit elitist? Like, how can we all find guidance if we can't even recognize them?
That's a great question. I think Hulusi might say it's not about finding specific people, but about developing those qualities within yourself that allow you to recognize truth and wisdom, wherever you find it.
Yeah.
He talks about Fardia, the path of those who follow only the prophet and their Lord.
Okay.
It's about that direct connection, personal relationship with the divine.
And then there's that saying, my saints are under my dome, none knows who they are. It's like, it's this secret society of enlightened beings working behind the scenes.
It's a beautiful mystery, isn't it?
It is. And if they're all around us, maybe recognizing them isn't about outward appearances. Maybe it's about, sensing a certain quality of presence, an inner light.
Exactly. The more we cultivate that inner connection ourselves, the more sensitive we become to recognizing those who share that connection.
It's like we need to develop our own spiritual radar, I guess.
Precisely. And speaking of diving deeper, Hulusi does just that when he explores the Sufi understanding of the spirit, the Ruh. That's when things get really interesting.
I'm already feeling like my understanding of Sufism is expanding, so yeah, let's dive into this concept of the spirit and see where it leads us.
Hulusi doesn't waste any time. He takes us straight to the Quran for this one.
Okay.
There's a verse that describes the spirit as from the command of my Rob. And he connects this to the whole concept of divine manifestation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like the spirit is an extension of the divine, the way the divine breathes life and consciousness into creation.
So the spirit isn't some separate being out there,
Right.
but like an integral part of us, a manifestation of the divine within us.
Exactly. And it's this spirit, according to Hulusi, that's like the essential element of our being, the very source of life itself.
He even draws a parallel with the angel Gabriel, both being manifestations of divine command. So the spirit acts as a bridge between the divine and the physical world.
Yes, and this brings us to another interesting point. He distinguishes between what he calls the grand spirit,
Okay.
which is the universal spirit, like emanating from the divine,
Right.
and the personal spirit, which is shaped by our individual experiences.
So our personal spirit is like a reflection of the grand spirit,
Yeah.
a unique expression of that universal essence, but shaped by our journey in this world.
Precisely. And as we awaken, Hulusi suggests, our personal spirit becomes more aligned with the grand spirit. We can tap into that infinite source of, wisdom and power.
So it's like refining our personal spirit to be more like the grand spirit.
You got it. But it's important to remember, even though the spirit is a manifestation of the divine, it's not something we can, control
Right.
and manipulate.
That reminds me of those who claim to call upon spirits, like in those spooky rituals. Is Hulusi saying that that's not really possible?
He definitely addresses those claims.
Okay.
He says they come from a misunderstanding of what the spirit truly is. Only the divine can call a spirit back to its origin.
So those ghost stories are more about people's fears and desires than a true understanding of the spirit.
That's likely what Hulusi would say, yeah. He encourages a more reverent approach, recognizing the spirit as sacred, not something to be messed with.
Right. It's a manifestation of the divine, not some force we can control.
Exactly. Respect is key.
It seems like Hulusi emphasizes aligning ourselves with the divine will throughout the book,
He does.
instead of trying to bend the universe to our will.
It's a great observation.
Yeah, that keeps coming up. And then he brings in this practice of Dik remembrance of God. But he goes beyond the simple idea of Dhikr as just repetitive prayer.
He does.
He talks about it evolving into contemplation and ultimately this state of hidden Dik.
Hidden dhikr, huh? That's where it gets really interesting.
It does. He even compares an hour of contemplation to years of worship.
Yeah.
He's saying deep reflection has this incredible transformative power.
Powerful stuff.
But how does this hidden Dhikr actually show up? Is it something we can intentionally cultivate?
That's the question, isn't it? Hulusi says that as we practice, dhikr can become so ingrained that it's no longer a conscious effort. It becomes a natural outpouring of our connection to the divine, like breathing.
Wow, so it's less of a practice and more like a state of being.
Yeah, continuous awareness of the divine.
That's beautiful.
Hulusi even hints at these higher states of Dhikr that are beyond our current understanding,
Like beyond words.
beyond words, beyond concepts.
Wow, makes you wonder what that would be like.
It does, doesn't it? But, he reminds us that even while we're on this inward journey, not to neglect the physical aspects of spiritual practice. There's wisdom in those recommended practices, even if we don't fully understand them yet.
So it's not about rejecting tradition, but understanding it on a deeper level.
Right, exactly. It's about integrating the inner and outer, the spiritual and physical, bringing it all together.
It's like those saints we talked about earlier, the hidden guides. They seem to embody that integration so effortlessly.
Yes, they do.
Hulusi says they've already experienced death, the death of their illusory selves.
Right, they've let go of that limited identity.
And because of that, they're free to live in this state of constant remembrance.
And their actions just flow naturally from that connection to the divine. They become the giving hands of the Rab, constantly pouring divine grace into the world.
But they could be anyone, right? They might not even stand out.
Exactly. My saints are under my dome. None knows who they are. We could be interacting with them every day and have no idea.
That's wild. It's like Hulusi is saying, look beyond appearances. The potential for spiritual realization is in everyone.
Precisely. Cultivate that inner vision, that capacity to recognize the divine spark within ourselves and in others.
It's like, don't judge a book by its cover. The person next to you on the bus might just be a hidden saint.
You never know. And speaking of perception, Hulusi uses this really interesting analogy. He says, water takes the color of its cup. What do you make of that?
It's a good one. I think it's about how our perception of reality is shaped by our own individual conditioning, our beliefs and experiences.
Rob?
Like, just like water takes on the color of its container, our understanding of the world is filtered through our own unique lens.
Yes. He wants us to be aware of those filters, to understand the biases that shape our perception, so we can move beyond those limitations and see things more clearly.
So we're all looking at the same reality, but interpreting it differently based on our individual perspectives.
That seems to be what he's suggesting, yeah. And he reminds us that even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sought forgiveness 70 times a day.
Wow, 70 times.
Even those who have reached such heights of spiritual realization still recognize their human limitations.
It's a good reminder that we're all on a journey, constantly striving to align ourselves with the divine will.
Exactly. Recognizing our shortcomings and seeking forgiveness for our missteps.
He even quotes from the Quran, Allah will never hold anyone responsible for that which they have no capacity. It's reassuring to know we're not expected to be perfect, just to do our best.
It's a message of self-acceptance and empowerment. Embrace your own unique path, knowing that you're supported every step of the way.
And the journey isn't about reaching some distant goal,
Right.
but about realizing that divine presence that's already within us.
Beautifully said. He then takes us on this really fascinating exploration into the nature of the spirit, the Ruh. He quotes this intriguing verse from the Quran. Say, the spirit is from the command of my Rab. Enter the manifestation of the names. And you have been given little of this knowledge. This answer is for the Jews who ask this question.
What stands out to you about that quote and its context within the book?
It's how Hulusi uses it to, debunk some common misconceptions about the spirit. He explains that it's a manifestation of divine command, just like the angel Gabriel. They're both forms of consciousness emanating from the divine, but they're not separate, independent entities.
So when people talk about having a spiritual experience, are they tapping into this concept of the spirit as Hulusi describes it? What does it really mean to connect with that part of ourselves?
That's a great question. Hulusi points out that the spirit is often misunderstood. Some think it's the same as the physical body or the brain.
Right.
But he's saying it's much deeper than that. It's a direct emanation from the divine.
So it's like this pure divine energy that's untouched by the limitations of the physical world.
That's a great way to put it. And even though we might think we can control it, he's saying we can't. He warns against trying to, call upon spirits or evoke them. He says that's only something the divine can do.
So all those stories about summoning spirits, those are more like reflections of our fears and desires, not accurate depictions of the spiritual realm.
That's probably what Hulusi would say. He's advocating for a much more reverent approach, understanding the spirit as something sacred.
So instead of trying to manipulate forces we don't understand, we should focus on connecting with the divine within.
Exactly. And this brings us back to surrendering to the divine will. The most profound spiritual experiences come not from trying to force things, but from surrendering to something greater than ourselves.
He then brings our attention back to those saints, the ones who have really achieved that surrender.
Yes.
He describes them as having already tasted death, moved beyond its fear, and they exist in this state of constant communion with the divine.
And their actions are a direct result of that connection, flowing effortlessly from that state of being.
It's inspiring to think about, even if we're not there yet ourselves.
It is, isn't it? But remember, they might not be who we expect them to be. My saints are under my dome. None knows who they are.
Right, so we could be interacting with these individuals every day and have no clue.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that inner vision, that ability to see beyond appearances.
So instead of relying on external cues, we need to develop our own spiritual radar, so to speak.
Precisely. And Hulusi suggests that the more we purify our own hearts and connect to our true essence, the more readily we'll be able to recognize those who have attained a similar state.
So it's like the more aligned we are with the divine, the more we'll be drawn to those who share that same aspiration.
Yes, and by surrounding ourselves with those individuals, we'll be supported and guided on our own path.
This really challenges the idea that spiritual guidance can only come from recognized authorities or institutions. It's about being open to recognizing the divine spark in everyone we encounter.
Exactly. And remember, Hulusi reminds us that the divine can work through anyone, regardless of their outward appearance or social status.
And speaking of recognizing the divine, Hulusi offers another fascinating insight into the nature of the spirit, the Ruh. He refers back to a verse in the Quran that states, "So when I have proportioned him," formed his brain, "and breathed into him, manifested through him," the word breath, which is naf in Arabic, literally means to blow out, i.e. to project explicitly, to manifest, to materialize, of my spirit, my names.
Powerful verse.
It seems to suggest that the spirit is an integral part of us, not some separate entity floating around.
Exactly. Hulusi really wants us to understand this concept of divine manifestation. He's saying the spirit isn't separate from the divine, it's an extension of it. It's how the divine breathes life and consciousness into creation.
So it challenges that notion that the spirit is independent from the body or the brain.
Precisely. It's an animating force that connects us to the source of everything. He even compares the spirit to the angel Gabriel, both being manifestations of divine command.
Wow, that's quite a comparison.
It is. But he also clarifies that this doesn't mean we can control the spirit. He's warning against those who try to call upon spirits or evoke them.
Right, he says only the divine has the power to do that.
Exactly. So, leave the Ouija board in the closet, folks. Hulusi encourages a much more reverent approach, recognizing the spirit as something sacred, not something to be toyed with.
It all comes back to respect, doesn't it? Respect for the divine, respect for the spirit, and respect for ourselves as beings with this incredible potential for connection.
Beautifully said. And that reverence for the spirit ties right back to his emphasis on self-knowledge, on that journey of dying before we die.
Yeah, what a profound concept. It really speaks to the idea of spiritual transformation, letting go of that attachment to the ego and identifying with our eternal essence.
Yes, and he emphasizes that this dying before we die isn't a one-time event, but a continual process of letting go and embracing the vastness of our true nature.
But that whole idea of dying before we die can be pretty intense. Like, how do we even begin to wrap our minds around it, let alone actually put it into practice?
It's a big concept, for sure. Hulusi suggests starting by simply becoming aware of our attachments,
Okay.
the things we cling to for security or identity. Could be material possessions, status, relationships, even certain beliefs or ideas about ourselves.
So it's about being honest with ourselves about what we're holding on to and why.
Exactly. What's the fear or the need driving that attachment? And it's not about forcefully rejecting those things, but more about understanding the hold they have on us and gradually loosening it.
This reminds me of the practice of mindfulness, becoming more present and aware of our thoughts and feelings without judgment. Could that be a helpful tool in this process of dying before we die?
Absolutely. Mindfulness is a great way to cultivate self-awareness, which is essential for recognizing how our ego operates. It creates space for deeper understanding.
So it helps us observe those ego-driven patterns with a little more detachment.
Exactly. And Hulusi also highlights the importance of certain qualities that support this process.
Okay, like what?
Humility, surrender, and contentment.
Okay, I can see how those would be important. How do those qualities specifically help with this ego death?
Well, humility helps us let go of the need to be right all the time, to control everything or to constantly prove ourselves. It allows us to be open to learning and growing.
Makes sense. What about surrender?
Surrender is about relinquishing that illusion of control, trusting in a higher power, the divine will. It's about letting go and allowing things to unfold as they may.
And contentment.
Contentment is about finding peace and acceptance in the present moment, no matter what's happening around us.
It sounds like these qualities all work together, supporting each other.
They do. And Hulusi reminds us that this process of dying before we die isn't about escaping from the world or denying our physical existence. It's about finding that deeper connection to our spiritual essence.
Right, that part of us that's eternal and unchanging.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that true happiness doesn't come from external things, but from aligning ourselves with the divine.
So it's about finding that inner peace and freedom that can permeate every aspect of our lives.
Yes, allowing us to navigate the world with grace and wisdom.
It sounds like dying before we die isn't about physical death at all, but about truly living, experiencing life more fully.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And Hulusi reminds us that we're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of seekers, both visible and hidden, who are there to support and guide us along the way.
That's a comforting thought to know we're all in this together.
We are. And it makes the journey all the more inspiring, knowing that we're contributing to a collective awakening, not just seeking individual enlightenment.
It's like a rising tide that lifts all boats.
Exactly. And Hulusi encourages us to be open to finding inspiration and guidance from unexpected sources. The divine can work through anyone.
Right, it's not limited to those in positions of authority.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Great Awakening, we're left with this invitation to die before we die,
Powerful stuff.
to let go of the limitations of the ego and awaken to the boundless freedom of our true nature.
And he leaves us with this image to ponder. Water takes the color of its cup.
What colors your perception of the divine? That's the question.
What color's my perception? That's something to really think about.
It is. And for those who want to explore Hulusi's work further, all of his writings are available for free on his website. It's a treasure trove of spiritual wisdom.
A great resource for anyone wanting to dive deeper. So keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep exploring the mysteries of your own being.
The journey is definitely worth it.
All right, so we're back, and I think it's time to really unpack this idea of dying before you die.
Yeah, it's central to Hulusi's message in The Great Awakening.
It is, but it's a bit of a paradox.
It is. Kind of makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a head-scratcher at first.
It challenges us to, rethink our usual ideas about life and death.
Right. So what is he getting at here? Is he talking about, giving up everything and becoming a hermit?
Not exactly. It's more about letting go of our attachment to the ego.
Okay.
That sense of ourselves as, separate individuals defined by our desires and fears, all those limitations.
So the ego needs to die for us to wake up.
That's the idea, yeah. Hulusi is saying the ego, with all its anxieties and cravings, that's what needs to go.
To make space for our true essence.
Precisely. He's pointing to something far greater and more expansive than that limited self we usually identify with.
That makes sense. So it's about recognizing that who we are at our core is not just this limited ego,
Right.
but something much bigger.
Exactly. And this death of the ego, it's not a one-time event. It's a process, an unfolding.
Okay, process.
It's about becoming aware of how our ego drives us,
Yeah.
our thoughts, our actions,
Right.
and then gently letting go of those patterns that keep us trapped.
This makes me think of that analogy of peeling back the layers of an onion
I like that.
to reveal what's underneath. But I imagine this process can be tough, maybe even a bit scary. Where do we even begin?
That's a good point. Hulusi gives us some practical steps. He says we can start by just reflecting on our attachments, the things we cling to,
Oh, okay, attached.
the things that give us a sense of security or identity.
Like what kinds of things?
Could be material possessions, status, relationships, even certain beliefs or ideas we have about ourselves.
So it's about looking at what we're holding on to and asking ourselves why.
Yes. What's the fear or need behind that attachment? And it's not about forcefully rejecting those things,
Okay.
but becoming more aware of the grip they have on us and loosening that hold a little.
This makes me think of mindfulness, becoming more present and aware of our thoughts and feelings, but without judgment.
That's a great connection. Mindfulness is a really powerful tool for developing self-awareness, which is essential for recognizing how our ego works.
So it helps us see those ego-driven patterns more clearly.
Exactly. And Hulusi also emphasizes certain qualities that support this whole process of ego death.
Which ones?
Humility, surrender, and contentment.
Okay, I can see how those would be important. But how do they actually help with this ego death?
Well, humility helps us let go of that need to be right all the time, to be in control, to prove ourselves. It allows us to acknowledge our limitations and be open to learning.
Makes sense.
Surrender is about letting go of that illusion that we're in control of everything and trusting in a higher power, the divine will.
Okay, surrender.
It's about letting go and allowing things to unfold naturally.
And what about contentment?
Contentment is about finding peace and acceptance in the present moment, regardless of what's happening around us.
So it's about finding that inner peace that's not dependent on external circumstances.
Exactly. And Hulusi reminds us that this dying before you die, it's not about escaping from the world or denying our physical existence. It's about finding that connection to our spiritual essence.
Right, that part of us that's eternal and unchanging.
Exactly. It's recognizing that true happiness comes from aligning ourselves with the divine, the source of everything good and true.
So it's about finding that inner peace and freedom that affects every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, allowing us to navigate the world with grace and wisdom, no matter what challenges come our way.
It sounds like this dying before you die, it's not about physical death at all,
No.
but about truly living.
Yes, experiencing life more fully, with greater depth and richness.
And Hulusi reminds us we're not alone in this.
Absolutely not.
There's a whole community of seekers out there, both the ones we see and the hidden ones, supporting us on this journey.
That's right, we're all in this together.
And that makes it even more inspiring, knowing that we're contributing to a collective awakening.
It's like a ripple effect,
It is.
Our individual transformation contributes to the awakening of all beings.
Exactly, a rising tide lifts all boats. And Hulusi encourages us to be open to guidance from unexpected sources,
He does?
because the divine can work through anyone.
That's the beauty of it.
It really is. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the Great Awakening, I think the main takeaway is this invitation to die before we die, to let go of the limitations of the ego, and to awaken to the boundless freedom of our true nature.
Powerful message for sure.
And he leaves us with that image. Water takes the color of its cup. It makes you think.
It does, doesn't it? What colors your perception of the divine? Maybe recognizing those colors is the first step towards true liberation.
That's a great question for all of us to consider. And for anyone who wants to dive deeper into Hulusi's work, all his writings are available for free on his website.
It's an incredible resource.
It is. So keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep exploring the mysteries of your own being. The journey is truly worth it.
It is. And remember, you're not alone on this path. There's a whole community of seekers out there supporting each other every step of the way.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking and keep awakening.